So I wanted to talk about something which is like the myth of nuclear weapons, because for a long time in the Cold War and even after the Cold War, it was understood that, you had to be careful with nuclear powers because they had nuclear weapons. And right now in the Baltic states, everybody says Russia won't attack us because NATO's got nuclear weapons. But here's the thing. In the Russian media, the Russian government is telling its people, and has been for quite some time, that NATO has attacked Russia and Russia is in a war with NATO. Now, the Baltic states don't hear that, right? They should, because they're in NATO, right? And so if Russia is saying we are in a war with NATO, what Russia is saying is we are in a war with the Baltic states. It might not have turned hot on that front, but that's what the Russian government are telling their people. And now, again, the position in the Baltic states is Russia will never attack us because NATO's got nuclear weapons. But what I want you to think about is this. NATO would never have gone into Ukraine in 2014 and performed a military coup. Do you know why? Because Russia's got nuclear weapons, right? You see, NATO changed the rules. NATO called Russia's bluff, and NATO were right? Russia is not going to use nuclear weapons unless NATO uses them first, because that's sane, right? That's sane. And NATO are exactly the same. NATO are not going to use nuclear weapons unless Russia used them first. And that should make the Baltic states absolutely terrified, because Russia is winding up into a war economy, and they understand that NATO, by going into Ukraine in 2014, NATO changed the rules of the game, and they said conventional war is on, right? We call your bluff. Nuclear power is a myth. No one's going to be the first one to use it, and that's why we can do the coup. And right now, the people in the Baltic states need to be thinking about whether or not nuclear weapons are real, right? Because the Russian government is telling the Russian people, we are in a war with NATO. And the Baltic states are sitting there like they're not part of NATO. In fact, they are amplifying the antagonism towards Russia. So people are talking about this war as though it's a video game, as though there's two players in control and one of them can just quit or rage quit, right? Wars aren't like that. They're more like a forest fire. They start burning out of control. There's nobody that can actually stop the NATO war, right? Even if nobody believes in it anymore, there's no off switch, right? It's really hard to understand how any politician can come onto the Western stage where you can't even say what's the difference between a man and a woman, and start talking rationally about the need to tone down this war with Russia before the Baltic states get absolutely smashed, right? It's inconceivable that a Western politician could even begin to turn this war off. Wars don't have an off switch. On the contrary, as Russia winds up, they are selling a just cause war. Their people are buying into it, right? Largely because there's a lot of justification for it, right? NATO did go into Ukraine and they did foment a coup, and Russia is being threatened openly by MEP politicians, right? So Russia is having a very easy time of selling this just war, and that winds the country up. It winds it up into a war economy. So I'm going to make a prediction, which is that the Baltic states will suffer direct attack from Russia within the next 2 years, because I don't see an off-ramp. And Russia is telling its people we are at war with NATO, and China is now saying we're going to stay out unless you go in, and then we'll back them up. So I don't know. If I was in the Baltic states and my wife is Lithuanian, I would be absolutely terrified of the next couple of years. Anyway, that's my speech. That's what I wanted to say this time.
I just want to respond to that real quick. In 2018, ISW put out a report that basically says that U.S. and Ukrainian and U.S. forces could not handle Russian ground forces anywhere in the Baltics. You can read it yourself. It's right on script. So we're going in there expecting something different in, 4 years time? What really changed in our doctrine that allowed us to go, oh, yeah, it's okay now for the Ukrainians. We'll do it by proxy, which other people need to look up what the word proxy means, because it ties them directly to everything that's going on, the ones that said it, because it said proxy means in your behalf.